don't have my little paper. I don't have my little paper. Oh, here it is. That's buried. Hold on, I got it. Here it is. I'm going to read this since I don't think we have a broadcast for this. Tonight is our regularly scheduled work session. The meeting is being videotaped for community cable channels. Individuals attending this meeting and attending to speak to the board should be aware that they're being videotaped. In order to meet the requirements of the Pennsylvania Sunshine Law, it is necessary to record the names of all citizens who speak to the board during the meeting. To assure compliance with this requirement, it is essential that those planning to address the board come to the microphone, state their name and address, and sign the audience of citizens logbook. Members of the audience are asked to limit their questions and comments. To allow time for all those who wish to speak to the board president may ask the individual to yield the microphone to the next speaker, and this is in reference to Board Policy 8340. Welcome, people. I would like to start with a Pledge of Allegiance led by Mr. Shiraki since he came in late. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, who's kicking this off?
All right, Mr. President, this evening we do have one presentation. It'll be a technology presentation, and starting the presentation will be our Director of Technology, Kristen Landis. And she will also introduce Ron Martiello and Brett Baker, who have a part of this presentation this evening. Kristen, it's yours.
Thank you very much. And I want to start by thanking the school board for the opportunity today to begin the conversation about looking at technology budgeting in a little bit of a different way. So what I'm going to ask as we talk here this evening is that you keep an open mind to the fact that we are still talking about technology budget, but really focusing on the lens of teaching and learning in a digital age and why we want to look at things a little bit differently. One of the things that's really important to us as a district, I believe, and as I've talked with lots of teachers in our school districts, is that we don't want to just begin with substituting. So if you look at the graphic on the right, hopefully everybody can read it. It says, okay, class, scroll down to page 63. So putting technology in the hands of kids and then using classroom practice that we've always used isn't really changing or assisting in student achievement. So we want to look at it differently. We want to think about what outcomes do we want to have for kids, and then what resources can we provide for them that make sense. So that's really the lens of discussion for today. So if we think a little bit about our society, I'd like to just point out a couple changes that have occurred. So some of you may have been familiar with the tool all the way at the bottom of that graphic, right? You might have played with that as a young child. Some of us may have played with the toy in the middle. Our kids of today, the iPhone was released in 2007. So children who were born in 2007 were born the same year the iPhone was born. It's kind of crazy when you think about that. So I'd like you to look at that text there real quick. What are you most likely to do first if you want to reach a person quickly? Now, you don't have to raise your hand or anything. Call.
I text them. I text them.
Text, okay.
Your age, I call the old people, I text the young people.
Okay.
I would just like to
Interesting.
note that I was at Mr. Schilling's home recently, and he has those two cans on a string still, sitting in the back.
I think there's some playgrounds who actually still have those built into their playground devices. So just if you think about, where we are in the world today, nobody's Snapchatting yet, right? My son does that. He's 15, so I am learning what the Snapchat world is about. I don't participate, but I do understand what that environment is. So let's take it a step further and think about research practices, something that's a little closely related to what we're doing in the classroom. If we have heard about a new disease, what are we most likely to do first to find out information about a particular disease or something that's new?
Yeah, research it on Google.
Anybody searching hashtags on Twitter?
Not yet.
No?
Medical advice? No.
No, it scares me after I read them. Now I have to,
Can you do that? I'll search.
Yes.
You can,
Yeah, you
yes,
can.
absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
So a more practical example for purposes of discussion might be when, if you were watching the Super Bowl, most people watched the halftime show, and immediately, as soon as it was over, people had hashtag, halftime show, and then you could see what people were saying about the halftime show, if they liked it, if they didn't, that kind of thing. So you can really... True. However, I believe, and I apologize, I don't know, there's a new virus. Anybody know the name of it?
Zika virus.
Yes. So if you do the hashtag for that virus, you can actually see what people are saying about it. And some people do publish research articles and links to their blogs about particular topics. So probably not one of the top 3 ways you're going to find the most quality information when you do research, but people do use that for lots of different pieces. So the context for what we want to talk about today, thinking about those things, and I think you probably are all going to be in agreement with the fact that we are living and working in a digital age. No getting around that, right? And we're committed to student achievement. You all wouldn't be here if you weren't committed to student achievement. To me, that's really a critical one, and really something that I want us to focus on as we talk about planning for technology here, because we really are looking at what's best for our students and how can we increase student achievement. So that we have a little bit of a common understanding about student achievement, these are just some of the words you may be familiar with. I'm sure that you've heard in other conversations, other presentations, probably even some of the things that Dr. Butts has presented in talking about curriculum that we want to develop in our teachers, and then we want to move forward with our students. So it's important for us to think about student achievement when we talk about technology, because we don't want to just purchase technology for technology's sake, right? So what are we doing in our classrooms right now? What kinds of things are we doing that target those particular ideas of student achievement? This is an example from one of our elementary classrooms. This particular student is taking a picture of herself to use in a presentation in a classroom. So she's actually creating content. Our kids are really creators in their environment. We are very much used to being consumers, so we're going to go to Google, we're going to get the information. Our kids want to create content. You may know somebody, if you don't have a young child, or that is publishing a blog or that has a YouTube channel. So our kids are not afraid to go out there, create these things, and put themselves out there and put content out there. We have a lot of teachers who are leveraging that technology, and this is the most exciting part of my presentation a little bit later this evening, when they will have you hands-on using a really exciting tool that we want to highlight as part of our technology planning. So here are some of our kindergarten students. Our kindergarten students were born in 2011. The iPhone was 4 years old when they were born. So when we think about technology, they were born into a world where there's already all this mobile technology available to them everywhere they look, even before they get to kindergarten. So, through the beginning parts of our technology plan, we have iPads available for sign-out use in our kindergarten classrooms. And Mr. Baker spends a lot of time in those classrooms. You can see 2 examples here of students using devices. Sometimes they're using them individually, sometimes they're using them in a more collaborative way. But think about it. When they graduate, it's going to be 2028. So the technology that was in their hands, when they were young, is probably going to look very different. We might be looking at those tin cans saying that's the iPhone, right? And what's it going to look like in 2028? Because technology is changing so fast. So we want to keep up with technology is changing, not just because we want to put technology in the hands of students, but because it supports the greater good of education and what's happening in the United States. So if we look at the National Education Technology Plan, the newest plan that was released really talks about future-ready learning, getting our kids ready for learning in this learning environment. It focuses very little on the acquisition of devices. It assumes that acquisition is going to be there. It focuses on the infrastructure, making sure that we have internet access for all of our students. And as you can see a number of the other words up there, it talks about creating culture for innovation and change, which is also another piece of what we want to be looking at when we talk about using technology here in North Penn School District. Another important piece of research that's out there that supports what we want to do are the ISTE standards. So the ISTE stands for the International Society of Technology and Education. So these standards are not only adopted by many places in the United States, but district-wide. If you look at those 6 standards there, the last standard on the list is Technology Operations and Concepts. And when the standards were first released many years ago, that one was on top because people felt the most important thing was for students to understand how to turn on a computer. There was a lot of discussion and debate when the standards were revised in 2007, And they purposefully put that particular concept on the bottom because while it's still important for students to have those skills, students are coming, many more of our students are coming with those skills. They're gaining technology skills in our classrooms, and what's more important for us to do in our classrooms is to create those creative, innovative, collaborative environments for our students, and technology can really do that. So tonight we want to talk about how we can leverage resources to do that. One other really important piece that's on the horizon that, whether or not we like it, is that the curriculum content and the publishers are changing what they're doing, right? We have 2 statewide digital adoptions, California and Florida. Texas legislation is pending. And many of the publishers are targeting their materials based on what those states have adopted. So if they've adopted digital materials, now the rest of the states are left going, if we don't adopt digital resources, what's going to happen to us? So one example, we're looking right now at a new curriculum for English Language Arts, 7 to 12. HMH has said that their copyright of their most current book is 2012, They have said that they're not going to revise that. And so when we look at that particular resource, it's probably not going to last us 10 years. Right? They're not going to revise that. It's already 3 or 4 years old by the time we adopt it. So that's pretty scary. And I want to thank Dr. Butts for being here this evening. So as we conclude, if you have further questions about adoption, she can assist in answering those questions. So the trend is that this is, our environment for publishing is changing. There's also another trend about consumable text. So we're used to this traditional text. Oh, shoot, I forgot my backpack. I don't know. Mr. Martiello, do you think you could go get it? And because you're the strongest one in the group, and this is going to be a challenge to bring this thing down here. We compiled a backpack for you so that you could see an example of what our high school students are carrying around. It's actually very heavy. I won't look very graceful when I pick it up because of the books and how big they are. But for textbooks, consumable textbooks are a little different. Think about them like workbooks, right? So our publishers are starting to say, we're not going to produce a traditional textbook. We're going to produce something that's more consumable. That's not very environmental friendly, and it costs more money because they're going to actually replicate a lot of the digital components. And so as the digital components change, the consumables will change. And so it'll look like a more subscription cost, similar to what we'd look at digital anyway. So that's kind of something we have to keep in the back of our mind. These resources are changing. So how can we prepare ourselves to leverage, those particular resources? 2 other really important pieces about how our world is changing have to do with online testing. So some of you may be familiar with the access test that targets our ESL students, and we were required this year by Pennsylvania, not every state required it, for all of those students who has English as a second language to take that test online. All right, here's our backpack. I would offer to pass this around, but I'm not sure you all probably want to pick it up.
We want to keep our students in shape.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
So this actually, I haven't weighed it. It has the 4 core curriculum books and foreign language in there. So even if we took out 1 or 2, these are big books. And it's my understanding, I've been doing a lot of the work in preparing for this conversation has been done in collaboration with curriculum. It's my understanding we don't buy classroom sets anymore because they're expensive. All right, and so we ask our students to carry around their books. So some may not bring them. Some teachers may say, bring them today, leave them at home. But the reality is, that's a lot for our students to be carrying around, especially in the high school. I think it's almost a 2-mile walking distance if you walk the whole high school, depending on what your classes are. So that's a lot of ground to cover. So absolutely, it's keeping them in shape. So real quickly about online testing. So we had 500 ESL students who were required to take this test online. Now, the awesome results of that, and Dr. Butts has been in the classrooms, she shared with me that one student at Hatfield actually said, this was really fun, taking an online test. And I was talking with Dr. Holben earlier, and we were talking about the type of test that it was. And you may be familiar with adaptive tests, where students, as they are doing well, the difficulty increases. If they're struggling, the difficulty decreases. So the test adapts for them. Online, it can do that. On paper, it's a more difficult process to do that kind of adaptive test. So her thought was that could be potentially another reason the students really liked the test, because they felt more successful taking that type of test because it was geared to really find out how well they were doing. So that's coming. You know, that's not a requirement for our PSSA, but it could be at some point. And there are some places right now who are doing PSSA and Keystones Online. We don't have the infrastructure for that yet, but I do have a plan for that. So when I got here, we started talking about what is a plan that all of our stakeholders can support. How do we move next forward in technology? So we brought together a group that I like to call the Digital Age Learning and Work Collaborative. And we purposefully called it that because we're not only talking about learning, but we're talking about work, and how do we support our teachers in their work, how do we support all of our staff in the work that they do with technology. And we looked at where do we want to go next, what makes sense for us for teaching and learning. We focused on the work. This past year, you approved investments in technology that supported mobile technology for teachers. We do actually have one-to-one technically for all of our ESC staff, all of our building staff. So when you think about those kind of workspaces, we have provided technology there. So the next step is really thinking about the classroom. So we've been focusing on this culture of mobility. We've been focusing on digital tools to support student learning. We have come to a point where we have a critical mass of shared devices here. So in all of our levels, we have lots of rolling carts of laptops, which is fabulous that they're being shared. It's fabulous, but it's also a challenge for us. And I'll speak to that a little bit later. We've been continuing to upgrade our wireless, and last year you supported the wireless build for the elementary school. We had E-rate funding that assisted with that. So by the end of this school year, we will have upgraded the wireless in all of our elementary classrooms. And that's a really important piece to whatever we choose to do moving forward with technology, because we need to continue to build the infrastructure, the backbone, or the roots, if you will, so that we can grow the next piece of it. So one of the things that we've started to do in my time here is begin to look at different types of devices. So you may be familiar with a PC or a Mac. You may be familiar with an iPad. Some of you may have mobile phones, Samsung. You might have an Android tablet. So Chromebooks are similar to an Android tablet in some ways and similar to a PC in other ways. And you actually have one sitting in front of you, and we're going to get you involved in an interactive, transformative demo in just a few minutes here so you can experience this technology. But we started to look at this technology for a number of reasons. First of all, there's a central management portal to it. So it makes it very easy to manage 5 devices or 5,000 devices. There's no additional cost for things like antivirus. So typically when we add computers in our environment, we have to add virus protection and other licensing pieces. It has a 10-second boot time. So if you close it, count to 3 and you open it, it's going to come right back to where it was. And you can try that if you want. It has an 8 to 10 hour battery life. So typically, at least for one day, sometimes for 2 days, students don't have to charge their device. These were all charged this morning, and they've been sitting in my office all day, and so they still have a pretty long battery life. I think most of them have about 6 to 8 hours left. We didn't do that much with them. We can provide the ability to work offline. So for students who don't have internet access, if we want to provide these devices for them to take them home and do work at home, they can do that even if they're not connected. So it's a very cost-effective productivity tool. The price points range. You may see consumer models for $199. They range all the way up to $500. Depends on your model. The typical education price is about $300, $400, depending on what you're looking for. So it's significantly lower than most PCs that we would purchase for the environment. So our current technology refresh rate has been about 5 years. That's what we've been doing, replacing existing technology and beginning to expand technology. We've picked a few areas where we have some one-to-one currently. We have our 3rd graders, 4th graders, and 6th graders right now with laptops. Except for those environments, we're still dealing with shared digital resources. And the challenge with the shared digital resource model is that there is minimal change in instruction. So if you think about it, if you are used to using a piece of technology for your work, and then, let's say, every time we went to a meeting, we'd have to go see if the cart of laptops was available to log in and look at our email, it would be a challenge. And so many of our teachers who want to use this technology in their classroom are challenged by, for example, I was at the high school the other day and we had a fire drill. I guess it was a couple weeks ago. It lasted longer than normal, so it wasn't. And so if I was the teacher who had the laptops during that period, maybe tomorrow somebody else has those laptops signed out and I can't actually finish my activity with students because I might have to wait another week. So now kind of the timeliness of using that in my curriculum has been lost. So certainly some challenges with shared environment. You know, better than having no technology? Absolutely. So my conversation tonight with you is to begin thinking about looking at technology refresh in a different way. We certainly know we can't fund everything in 1 year, but I'd like for us to start to think about looking at a replacement cycle, 5-year cycle, that looks at equity and access and systemic change. So a little bit different than when we think about shared devices. So equity and access for all of our students. So what does that look like? Now, this is our first conversation, and our plan is to come back to ECP as well as Finance Committee and discuss the details of this particular proposal. There's a lot to take in tonight, so we wanted to just be able to give you the overview of what we're talking about. So if we look at a lease model, which is what we've been doing, at least that's what we did last year, to get these devices. Over time, if we think about moving to a one-to-one refresh, we can streamline our devices and we can actually decrease our costs over time. So if you look at the red bars would be if we look at a model where we're implementing one-to-one and we're moving to that in the next 3 years. We have 2 years that are initially high. The second year there, the first bar is actually 15-16, which is our current school year, where we invested in 5,300 devices already. Proposing that next year we invest, again, similarly with the same number of devices, which really gets us to almost a full base, being prepared for one-to-one, and then having to fill in a couple places. So it's a lot of money, and over time you can see some of those resources change, and we, again, would have to reevaluate that. So we may be investing in something right now, and in 3 years we may need to say, we have to relook at those resources. Would we reinvest in the same type? For example, you know, we've determined iPads are the best device right now for K-2, and we've made a very heavy investment in that. Is that the best device in 2 years? There may be a device that's even better and more cost effective. So one of the things that we always want to make sure that we're doing is reevaluating our plan and making sure that we're making the best decisions that we can for learning. So I'm moving quickly through this because I want to make sure we get to our hands-on piece here. But the second piece, which I mentioned earlier in the presentation, is not only the acquisition of devices, but the supporting of the infrastructure. And you've been very generous in supporting our infrastructure. Last year you supported the elementary school build. With the help of E-rate, we were able to upgrade every elementary building. Our proposal for next year would be to upgrade all of the middle schools. With E-rate funding, that offsets our costs by just about 50%. And then we've had a lot of conversations about what do we do about the high school. Currently, we have that in the plan for 17-18 to upgrade the high school. In the intermediate, we would take existing access points, which we would replace because we'd be getting new ones for middle school, and bring them to the high school. So there would be the opportunity to expand wireless at the high school with existing technology until we could apply for that funding to do an upgrade to more powerful access points. So what are our neighbors doing? So that's one thing you're probably thinking, well, this is all well and good. What do other people, is anybody else doing this? Is this the craziest idea you ever heard of? Hopefully not. But a lot of our neighbors are looking at one-to-one models at various levels, many of them focused on the high school, and some of them on the middle school. And this is actually, I haven't heard back from every district. This is the data that I have to date, and I've also reached out to a couple other counties to see what they're doing as well. But you can see there are a lot of them who are moving in this direction. One of the things that they do when they move in that direction is they have to think about, you know, how does it affect our environment? So We consolidate resources. We provide tools that are easy for our teachers to use. We provide a consistent tool, which is the Google portal, which you're going to see in just a couple minutes. Engaging the community. This one is really critical. And so I'm going to move through these other ones rather quickly, because engaging our community provides them with a way to feel connected, and also with our students to have some personalization and also some ownership of the devices that we invest in. We also want to make sure that we have the staff to support it and that we're aligning professional development and curriculum resources. That piece to me is critical. I think Dr. Butts and I meet at least bi-weekly, if not more, on how are we doing, what do we need to do, how can technology support more of the things that you're doing in your classroom. So we have basically, timelines that we would need to flesh out if we move in this direction, thinking about in spring, talking to our community, talking with our staff, creating a professional development implementation plan. So there are lots of pieces that we'd have to put together, and again, certainly not every detail needs to be presented this evening, but want you to have an idea of what we're thinking about as we move forward. The collaborative tool that we would focus on would be the Google portal. And if you're not familiar with Google Apps for Education, it is actually free for education. And it's also ad-free. It also provides us with the ability to filter email for students and to choose which things we want to allow for students under 13, which things we want to allow for students over 13. And it provides us with a single point of management. It also gives us some great data on what we're doing, and I'll show you that in just a minute. Engaging the community. I know this is a different way of thinking. We haven't been using any type of fee structure here that I'm aware of for community at this point, but one of the things most school districts do is they bring forward a computer fee to their parent community. And so something certainly that has to be well thought out. Most districts, it ranges from $30 to $90, depends on their model, what they do, how they do their leasing and how they do their warranties. But looking at two options that I think might be very successful here for our district. One would be a $50 a year computer fee, and that would cover the warranty. And I believe that piece is critical because if we have a complete care warranty with accidental damage, we can allow the students to take the devices home. Currently, the devices that we have are set in classrooms. Students aren't taking them home. They are traveling with them to other locations like the library, but they aren't taking them home. The other thing is we could provide a lease-to-own option, which would, again, help to offset our costs. It would be a little bit of a higher cost, but parents could own it at the end of 3 years. It would provide for accidental damage, the same type of thing, allows the students to take the device home. Typically in those models, students are asked to take the devices home to charge. So there's not an increased cost, and now we have to wire all of our buildings for power. These devices last all day, so students take them home, charge them at night, or if they don't take them home, they would have a standard spot to put them to charge overnight, and then we bring them back during the day. So aligning the technology support staff, this is an important piece, making sure that we are providing that just-in-time support for teachers. We have a great technology team here in our school district, if you're not aware, and we do have technology support in every building right now, which is fabulous. And so that really puts us in a very good spot to be able to add more technology without needing to add any additional staff. Talking about curriculum, again, one of the things that we would spend some more time discussing are the offsets that we could, and looking at potential savings when we talk about digital curriculum. So looking at online resources versus textbook resources. I spoke to that a little bit. Looking at things like benchmark testing right now, and you can see in the spreadsheet I've referenced the amount of time it takes to copy a midterm, the amount of the cost of the paper, the cost of the copying. You know, they may seem small costs in and of themselves, but they're adding up to thousands of dollars that we could incrementally save over time if we were leveraging digital resources. And then finally, we would want to provide a model for our teachers that they can use so that they can continue to enhance their skills. And this model, the SAMR model, is a model that many school districts adopt, and when teachers are using technology, has multiple levels. It doesn't mean you have to be at one level all the time, but it goes from substitution, which is sometimes where people start, all the way to redefinition, or what we like to call transformation. So that's what we're going to take you through here in just a minute, is an activity that will allow you to see a little bit about transformation in the classroom. So to finish up, I just want to talk just a minute about how would we know if this was successful. Obviously, anytime you do an implementation, you want to be able to evaluate it and make sure that it would be successful for your environment. And one of the things I think is very important is to look at multiple data points. So those of you who are new may not be familiar with our Bright Bytes data tool, but we have been using that tool for a number of years. It looks at multiple pieces of implementation when you're using technology. So it looks at what's happening in the classroom. It looks at how are students accessing technology. Do they have more access to technology? What technology skills do they have? What environment have we provided for them? We certainly are always talking with our principals about observations, and you can see this is actually an example, a picture from one of our second grade classrooms. Those students have iPads. I apologize, it's small. But in this example, you can see there are students sitting, there are students on chairs, there are students, I believe, behind there working with the teacher. So they're able to move wherever they need to in their classroom for their learning. And then another piece of data, which I can show you right now, is the usage of our Google portal. And this was a really exciting piece of data. We just were able to mine this data earlier this month, last month. And so you can see here in this example, from starting our Google portal in August and really getting teachers involved with it, getting them to think about how can they use Google in their classroom, to January, the increases in how Google Docs are being used, how Google spreadsheets are being used, how presentations are being used, in both the student and the staff side. The increases in some of these are just incredible. So that's another piece of data that we would want to use and look at every 6 months to see, is that use increasing as we provide these tools. So I know that's a lot of information to be thinking about, but again, our first conversation to think about how can we budget for technology different and really provide equity and access for all of our students and make sure that our goals of this district drive the vision of technology. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Ron and Brett, and I want to thank them both personally for being here this evening. I also would be remiss if I didn't thank Upper Dublin, who loaned us some Chromebooks, Montgomery County IU loaned us some Chromebooks, and Dell loaned us some Chromebooks. So these are not our Chromebooks. I apologize. You can't take them home with you, but maybe down the road, if we want to go to digital board meetings, we can get you some devices there. So.
Good evening. Just going to grab the mouse here. We can put it over here just for now, if you would, please.
Oh, you're staying here? I'll move over there.
Yeah, I'll stay here.
All right.
I like the podium. It's nice. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I want to thank Dr. Landis and Mr. Baker for inviting me here to help out. The numbers that you saw about the usage, I have to credit both of these individuals for, because they are spreading the word about these wonderful tools that Google is offering with Google Education. So I want to thank Mr. Baker because he helped me to make that leap this fall to Google Classroom, which we'll get to. And this is what, when we talked about Google Classroom, this is what we're talking about, this tool right here. And if you can, I think you all have this stream in front of you. It's green, and it says school board meeting.
So Ron, at this time, they are all looking at their classroom. That's great. So we just started rolling this out this year in the classroom. So Ron is one who has really embraced it and started using it. And it really helps a lot with workflow. That's really becoming an issue in the classroom with technology. How do we move documents between parties? How do we work collaboratively? How do we save? How do we work at home and also work in school? And so Google Classroom has bridged a lot of those gaps, and it makes what we do in the classroom just go that much further. It really extends the learning.
So what we've done is we've created a classroom that what you can see in a day. I'm fortunate enough that my third graders have access to a laptop throughout their day. And so they start in the morning, and they have a launch pad here that they can go through their day. And this helps the day. It's seamless as we work through a lot of the different assignments. You can start out the day by giving the students an announcement. I just gave a simple welcome to you. But what I can add here is some special messages of the day, let them know about Spirit Day coming up. Also, I can have different items attached to this announcement. I know my students were having lunch with the principal just a couple weeks ago, Mr. Goslin, and so what I did was I posted the schedule up here to Google Classroom so they knew which days they would be attending lunch with him. So all of those are wonderful things to be able to give them. So when they get unpacked and they open up this portal, they're able to see a special message from the teacher. I can also share this portal with other teachers. So if I'm in an inclusion classroom with some special education teachers or even with ESL teachers, I can add them as instructors, just as I've done with Mr. Baker and Dr. Landis here, and we can all collaborate in providing resources for our students. As you scroll down, you see we have the math morning work, and that consists of a problem of the day and then also a link to a video. Now, these both are Go Math resources that I've pulled into the stream. And so while I'm doing attendance and while I'm sending notes down to the office, my kids can start the problem of the day. What you need to do is just click on Math Morning Work. It'll open up for you. And then you can type in your answer to the problem of the day. Now, my screen up here is the teacher screen, and you will have the student screen. I require students to answer the problem of the day, and as you can see, it says A, B, and C, but that's not necessarily what I want them to do. I don't want them to pick a letter. I want them to explain their thinking. So it gives me an opportunity to see how these students are actually solving these math problems. That is my favorite song of the day. That's playing over there with Mr. Schilling. That's the video for our Go Math lesson. And so it starts out with a brief introduction of the skill that the students are going to see when I teach it later on. So essentially, they come in, they watch the video, which is a flipped lesson, so they get to see the concept first. Thank you. They get to see the concept first through the video, and then they're able to solve the problem of the day. And then after I'm done with attendance and notes and different things, making sure everybody has the materials they need, I'm able to start my math lesson. And they already have an idea of what I'll be teaching for that day.
If you look up at the screen right now, at any one of the screens, you can see 2 out of 11 students have completed the assignment. So for me as a teacher, I have this on my computer or my laptop as I'm moving around the classroom. I can actually see who has completed the assignment by just clicking on the 2 done. You're not going to see that, but if you go to the 2 done, Ron, over to the 2 that are done, good. So I can see that both Dr. Butts and Mr. Shapinski have finished their assignment, and I have 11 that are not done at this point. So you can return.
It's so hard not to do the answers.
What I can do now is, what's really nice is I can click on Cheryl McHugh's assignment, and
a better show focus.
actually over on the left-hand side, I can now add a grade to Cheryl's assignment. So, Ron, if you would go to her grade, and since we haven't changed the point value, this is out of 100 points. So, out of 100 points, Ron's going to put in, she got 90 points.
Yeah, you lose
And-
points for not answering fast enough. There's a timer on this thing.
We wanted a little bit more detail,
why
and
she's not the
now
business
all
manager.
Ron has to do as a teacher at the top, he can hit return. And if he hits return, it will return Cheryl McHugh's assignment to her, and we can add a comment. We can add a comment to Cheryl and say, great job, Cheryl. Next time, give me a little bit more detail. And as soon as we hit return, that's right, you can just say, great job.
Well, we want to give, the one thing that we like about this tool also is we can give specific feedback because we know that's a great teaching practice. We can say great job and give grades, but we want to make sure that we're giving feedback on specific academic behaviors. So Mrs. McHugh was one who did explain the answer. We would like a little more detail. There are a few more steps that could be used. Maybe she forgot a label in her explanation, which is a very big requirement in 3rd grade. But I could also coach her while this class is going on. So that's the kind of feedback that we can give with this tool. I'm going to just return it as is there.
Yep. Now that he's returned it, that assignment will go back to Cheryl McHugh, and if she were to tap on that assignment again, her points would show up on her screen. So now we've just increased the communication between teacher, and it's been immediate feedback. So right away, she has the feedback of that assignment. Go ahead, take us back into the classroom, Ron.
So this is our morning work. Then I would continue with my lesson on the smartboard using the Think Central materials. I can bring any one of the Think Central materials in there. Think Central houses our Go Math as well as our Journeys materials. So again, this is a landing site, and I could bring the materials to the students through this stream. Moving on to reading, we had a story called Technology and Sports, which was a very cool story. And so I was able to, we had to write a response to the story, and we wanted to know, how does technology affect sports? So I actually attached a video of Drew Brees throwing a perfect spiral. And the students watched this up on the screen. They were able to take notes, and they were able to start their response to how technology helps sports just by watching the video. They could take notes live and start responding to the question as they're watching the video. There were many points that they had to add, and it all had to be in cause and effect language. So because Drew Brees throws the ball at a 6-degree angle, and because of the number of 3 wobbles to every 5 spins, he is able to hit the target 10 out of 10 times in the video. And the students were able to, again, use the media, not just text, but also use media, which is one of our state standards, so that they can respond to that. So, yes.
Could you use your microphone, please?
Sorry.
Thank you, no problem.
So when you're showing this to the students, does the Give the Gift of Life and Donate and Sucks Born Before 1969, is that on their screen as well?
Oh, wow. You know what?
Science Kids, yeah, it's their website, right?
This is an outside, this is a third-party website. This is not one of our district materials. I apologize for that. I didn't see that. But, yes. Yes, so...
All third party have ad
That's a good point, but
support.
just to clarify, in the Google portal, there are no ads. It is completely ad-free. That's part of the education agreement.
But still, one of the joys of this is that Ron has packaged an entire lesson, an entire set of skills for that strategy right in Google Classroom in that one assignment. And so he's going to talk a little bit further about how he has put the pieces together for cause and effect.
So what I could do also is I could actually put in, this is an example right from our Journeys materials, where it gives the kids an idea of what a cause and effect writing is. They can analyze this writing in the materials, but then also reference back to the video and try to synthesize the information to build a great cause and effect document. So
Now, Ron, as you open this, when you open as students, if you open right now that document that Ron is talking about, the cause and effect writing piece, which would be, they have, sorry.
they just,
my
this
mistake.
is a view only for them. The
Yeah.
next one is coming up.
All right, thanks.
So
Sorry, next one.
when what happens is when I give this out to the students, I have a choice. I can have them view the document. I can have them edit a single document so that I can have 24 students editing a single document, or I can hand it out to each individual student, which you'll see in another writing piece later. So we're going to move on to STAR period, or our RTII intervention period, and I teach a Tier 1 period, and we're doing a study on the BFG, which is a story by Roald Dahl, and I am reading the story out loud. Meanwhile, as I'm reading, the students are taking notes. This is a document that you can type into individually. So if any one of you typed on the document, you would see that Google Doc pop up. And you would see tables in there. Let me go back here.
So if you just click on BFG Notes, your note screen will open and it will say across the top, BFG Notes, and it will have your name across the top. So as Mr. Sierpinski opens his document, it will say BFG Notes, Vincent Sierpinski. Whatever he's logged into as Google, his Google login will automatically create that document. It automatically saves his document in his Google Drive. Then it automatically saves a copy in the teacher's drive. That's an awesome piece right there, because now not only is he working on the piece at his table right here, but Ron also has access to his work. There is no more lost work because it's saving automatically right within Google.
So I am going to go into Dr. Dietrich. I'm going to go into your document here.
Okay.
So I can go into the document that Dr. Dietrich is typing in. If you would just, in the physical traits here, Dr. Dietrich, if you just put, the BFG as a giant.
Now you can see where Dr. Dietrich is typing because his cursor is there.
And what I'm going to do is if I'm in his document, I see him typing and I want to coach him a little farther, I could highlight a section of his document. I could click on comments. And then this little icon comes up here on the right. So as the student is working in the document, I can actually coach them into and shape their behavior as far as what I want them to do. So I might require a little more detail than BFG is a giant. So I might want to say something about his ears. He didn't comment anything about his ears. That was a big piece of that chapter. So I'll ask a question over here in the comment section.
Ron, after you ask the comment, can Dr. Dietrich respond to your comment?
Yes, he can.
Wow, that's beautiful.
So Dr. Dietrich could either go back and add more to his document, and then he can hit resolve.
Or he could reply.
And he could also reply. Meanwhile, I have every time I add a comment to the side here, I can actually go up here and see the record of my comments. So as a formative assessment, if I'm trying to figure out, where the child's strengths and needs are, I just go back and look at the comments I dropped into their document, and I can go back and do my formative assessment that way. You're going to see later on how I keep that data in another document with another writing assignment. So the on-the-spot coaching is just one of the most powerful tools with this. I mean, instead of giving a paper and then having the student receive a grade, taking it home overnight and then trying to grade them all, giving them back to the student, I can actually be, on the field with them, coaching them through these academic behaviors. So I'll keep moving here. And again, I could also give grades for all of those as well.
Could you go back into there for just a moment? The screen that you just came out of with the grading screen. As a teacher, I have the ability to go through every one of these documents right now and grade it and return your grades as fast as I can get through those papers on my device. So I can use my laptop, I can do it at my house on my PC, I could do it on my phone. Ron is pulling up his phone he's pulling the grades up on his phone right now, and so he's grading an assignment on his phone. Our teacher's going to be out there doing it on their phone, like Ron is right now. That's not necessarily our expectation, but it's awesome that ability is there, that Ron can access these grades anywhere he has a device. Ron, are you making some magic over there?
Yes. So I gave Dr. Dietrich a 100% for his comments on the paper there. And that's another great thing about this, because I can access all this stuff on my phone. This is my grade book. These are the papers that I have to bring home every night. And it's all right here. And I can access them here. I can access them on my own PC as long as I have my login information. I'm going to move on to another group assignment, or a group assignment that we did with writing.
You're coming back to my piece?
Oh my, yes, we have to go through your piece.
Oh,
Yeah,
we're
sorry.
going to my piece now. Excellent. So if everyone who is at their computer would go to Take Me Home Chrome, and I'm going to talk while you're going to Take Me Home Chrome. Take Me Home Chrome is a Google form that I created, and that Google form is easily made by me using material that we studied throughout the day. And so, Ron, if you would go to I want to see their responses. And so I think you might have to, I'm not sure how you're going to get to their responses until you do the form. So you might have to do the form, and then at the end, I think I left an option for you to see the results.
All right.
Ah, there you go. See everybody's responses. That'll take you there. So what I can see is everyone's responses to BFG questions. What does BFG stand for? How many states are currently hold caucuses? And right now I'm looking at them as just bulk numbers, but I can also break it down. Mr. O'Donnell, you're questioning how many caucuses we have? So the correct answer for caucuses, I'll wait to give you the correct answer. Can you scroll down a little further? Thanks. So Google Forms, we can use this for every item that's on there. Every item that I listed can be used Google Forms. So this is this will also show up in a spreadsheet format. Right now I have it Ron has it in presentation format, but it can also be viewed in a spreadsheet format, which makes grading three what? No. I think the correct answer is, well, a lot of people haven't filled out yet. The correct answer is 10 states. 10 states currently hold caucuses. All right, Ron. I think people are still working on it, but I think you should move on.
All right. We have 2 more assignments left in our day. We have a different type of writing assignment where the students had to write an explanatory essay about the blizzard of 2016. Now, this is a little different than a reading response. They had to construct the story. It's an explanatory story, so each student saw this slide, and again, looking at the data, what we do is we talk about the focus skill. Each student will do an explanatory essay about the blizzard, and we're going to focus on pre-writing strategies. I give them last week's data on their performance. This week we were focusing a lot on conventions because last week we had made a transition from a single paragraph to multiple paragraphs, so kids had trouble with the conventions as we moved toward there. So I will say that they did make an improvement in the next week on that skill. So how can we grow? We do a slide here and talk to them about how they can grow, and they have access to this all the time as I talk to them about their work.
Real-time scoring for me? Just for me? Is this the teacher rating me?
No, well, this is his example, but it could be if he was grading you right now. That's just an example.
What is the 2.91? Is that the teacher grading me, or that's
It's last week's results
Right.
for focus and
Okay.
organization, Frank.
Correct.
So
Frank,
what I
think
do
those were
is
last week.
we give the
Last week's
students,
results.
we give the students a 1, 2, or 3 based on the results, and that's the standard scores. And then what I do is I take a class average, and I see how we're doing as a class.
That's real time.
It's from last week. That's not real time. That's it, results from last week, and we're trying to push up to a 3 this week. Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yes, it is. So I see you're seeing if it populated.
Where do you need to teach?
So next, we have what's called a shared writing.
This is what the
So we have a shared document here. And in the shared document, I can actually have every single one of you in the document at the same time. This document right here was constructed by 24 students collaboratively. So we start out with, we ask the students to put their cursors in the box up here because they do like to chase each other with their cursors. They like to see the different color cursors chasing each other around. So I had to come up with a management strategy to solve that.
Ron, can I have 24 people type in a Word document?
Yes, we can
No.
have
A Word document?
Oh, Word doc, not
Microsoft Word,
not a
can I have
Microsoft
20
Word,
people?
but here we can.
In a Google Doc, I can have 24 people typing at the same time.
Yes.
That's beautiful.
The
So-
maximum is 50, yes, in one document.
So we had students, each group, the groups were broken into 4 different teams, and so they each had to write an introduction sentence. So each team had to construct an introduction sentence, and what they're doing is they're collaborating, trying to build this essay before they get to it individually. After they construct this part of the essay, we go back to our seats. Each team has to read each other's comments, and then they score each other. And if they score them a 3, they have to give them 1 to grow on. If they score them a 2, they have to give them 1 to grow on. So the students are exposed to the writing before they even get it individually, which is a great process for the students. And we could see some of our team members are coming on board as we speak. I could still drop those comments in as I need to. What I usually have is one person types, the other person assists in the typing, and then I have 2 or 3 other students on the team watching the other teams type their answers in, seeing if they can springboard details from those groups' topics. And as you can see, when we're done, we have 4 different essays that students can choose from for examples when they go to write their individual essay. This is a powerful tool. The kids are exhausted after this tool. I mean, they have to collaborate, they have to stay on focus, develop their content, and really work together. And this is where the face time meets the screen time. This isn't, the kids aren't on the screen all day. They have to talk about their answers in order to publish a well thought out document. And then finally, we move into science. We have a water wheel investigation through our FOSS kits. The students have to build a water wheel that demonstrates the power of water. And so what they need to do is they have to describe how the water wheel works and then use the vocabulary words from the lesson. Most of the time, I have them write a response, and then they have to reply to 2 other students before they're done. So that's where some digital collaboration can come in as well.
We can set a classroom up so that you can respond to other students' comments, or there is no commenting. So it depends on the assignment. We can create an assignment like a Facebook assignment where you could comment to everyone else who has made a comment or answered a question. Or we can set it up so that you don't see everyone else's responses, everyone else's answers, and it's private between the student and the teacher. One of the nice things about Google Classroom is the ease in which you can use it.
Get hashtags all the time, that's why I have my phone on.
I'm one of those.
So,
We put your picture in for you. We put everybody's picture in so you can see each other when you work in the classroom. Typically, we would have students do that.
No, we do it all the time. I just wanted to know why she has an avatar and you guys have a picture.
The avatar takes a little bit longer to create. I didn't want to be responsible for creating anyone's avatar here.
so that concludes our day as far as what a one-to-one classroom might look like over time. This definitely cuts down on the amount of copies I have to make, the time that it takes to transition from one lesson to another. Again, my gradebook comes home with me on my phone or my PC, and the students are excited. I had a student today, he was so over the moon. We talked about a presentation application called Slides. He was over the moon, couldn't wait to get to work again today. So I want to thank you very much for your time. Thank you, Mr. Baker, again, Dr.
You're
Landis,
welcome.
for
I'm going to
inviting me.
ask if there's questions. Does anyone have any questions?
Are there any
Frank.
questions? Frank, do you have any questions you want to speak into the mic about? I hear you making comments.
You mean
He's
about
just
the
excited.
presentation or this?
Hey, we'll take any and all.
I'm sorry, for the TV.
Who's answering the questions?
Are there any questions?
Brett will.
Does anyone have any questions for Ron and Brett?
Susan?
Could you use the mic again, please?
Sorry.
No problem.
There's like nobody here, so I apologize. But approximately how many hours in a school day do you spend using this technology?
We have the laptops on from the time we get into the classroom and the time that we are done for the day. Now, the students are on and off the computers throughout the day. There are still paper pencil activities that happen, and there are books in the classroom. They are, turning pages, not just clicking on the mouse pad. But that's a delicate balance that we have to find. We also want to make sure that we teach kids the importance of digital responsibility, which includes digital health, not too much screen time, and making sure that we're balancing our activities so we're not sitting in front of a computer all day.
I think if you traveled throughout our classrooms, you would see all different levels of use. I think Ron answered, he answered it very well. Some teachers are just starting with this in their classrooms. Some of the people that have had computers now for a year or more, they're ready for what's next. How can we better integrate our classroom into a digital platform?
Thank you.
Ron, what's your build time for your prep for this kind of thing? Is it better, worse,
I'd say
or
I'm a big believer in building systems, and one of the things that we have to teach teachers is that if you build the system, then you just add pieces on. There's a lot of front loading that does have to happen, but the great thing about, as Mr. Baker said, Google Docs or Google Drive has a way to share documents. I'm not on an island. Whenever someone has I could build a piece of it, but my colleague could build a piece,
My follow-up question was going to be.
and then we could share it in a single folder, and we could both access it. And then I could pull it over to my stream here.
Does this technology and the build prep time that you need and the sharing between different places, is this conducive to the professional learning community model that we're
Most certainly.
trying to expand on?
Yes.
And I do think you'll front load a lot of the work, but once it's there, like you said, it's modification and improvement.
Yes.
We've definitely started this year. We've done a lot of our meetings with Dr. Butts. We've started to use Google Classroom more and more in our professional circles because of the flexibility and the sharing and collaborative opportunities that it provides for us.
Does it behoove us, though, to do some of that front loading for our staff?
Say that again, I'm sorry.
Building for them, so that they don't have to start from scratch?
Are you talking about building classrooms?
I'm talking about building whatever we're going to use. If Ron develops a particular thing that he seems to think it works well in his classroom, is it possible that we could assign people that specific duty so that it doesn't have to, not everybody's going to be on the same level of comfort and confidence with this kind of stuff, and him being able to say, here are 3 or 4 things that I use already can
It's certainly possible, yes.
definitely bootstrap us up.
No doubt about it. It's certainly possible because now Ron has a nice lesson on cause and effect already built. It's not just a lesson, but there's components of that lesson. And it's very easy for him to share that to other peers that have Google Classroom up, ready to roll, and they say, wow, I've got cause and effect already.
Yeah. The thing is, there are a lot of resources out there, and you really have to evaluate which ones are in line with the standards and also with the experience that you have as far as, and that's part of the TPAC model with technology, content, and pedagogy. You have to have all 3 of those things together. And they're concentric circles, and they're different sizes with different teachers. But yeah, we could definitely build the usage data that Dr. Landis put up there from August to January, the numbers that went up there were incredible. And that just shows the power, the collaborative power of this tool, because I can put those documents out to students. We could have it go horizontally to 3rd grade. We could have it go horizontally to 5th grade. We could have it just in schools, depending on what the school goals are. So yes, and we don't have to move people from one building to the next to collaborate and share those materials. We could share them right online through Google Drive.
Just another piece too, in terms of professional development, our cabinet is actually in a Google Classroom. I have them learning about what we're doing with technology in a Google Classroom. So we're using Google Classrooms with our staff so they can use them and learn about how to use them in their classrooms. And Dr. Butz was just talking about some materials that she saw today that are online, and they link directly right into Google Classroom. Actually, our website also, the newest release of our website now has a plugin for Google Classroom. So one of our other goals down the road is, to look more at how can we leverage that website and teacher web pages and have it be kind of one point of entry for teachers and for parents to make it easier for that to flow.
Go ahead. Can you use your microphone, please?
Yes, I will.
Thank you.
I'm just curious, how much of this is being done in the foreign language classroom today?
I have to say that especially with our new adoptions of resources and materials in the foreign language classrooms, that a lot of the resources that we have recently purchased and the things that our teachers are doing in the foreign language classroom, they're doing some phenomenal, they're using technology in ways that really encourage reading, writing, speaking, listening, that really take them more into the different cultures that they're learning about. So, for example, VoiceThread, and I can share the name, and perhaps Mr. Baker can kind of share a little bit more about that, as well as Google Voice, are being used by our foreign language teachers. Now, those are two free resources that they use that really reinforce speaking and listening skills. The resources that we've recently purchased for them have things that have media-rich environments where they have videos in the language that they're studying, and they have to respond to the videos. So it's the ability to kind of reinforce the hearing component of the language. They also have parts within their technology that reinforce the speaking part. So they will actually speak into the computer, and the computer will check their language usage. So it's really exciting.
Been doing this? I'm just curious.
Well, how long have they been doing it?
Have we done this at all in the last couple of years with the students, use these materials?
Yes, yes,
Because the AP test scores are up
yes.
in language, and I have a feeling the weak part was always the oral part. So I have a feeling this is probably helping.
Absolutely. I would concur with you. I think one of the advantages to technology that we haven't had without technology in language classes is the ability to have multiple kids do listening and speaking components. Now they can just kind of use their headsets and use microphones, and you can have like a one-to-one the ability of someone speaking into a device and getting corrective feedback from it. Whereas in traditional classrooms, you may have had small groups try to do that, or the teacher responding or prompting the student, and the student's either doing a choral response or doing one-to-one feedback with the teacher. But the ability for a teacher to do a classroom of 30 kids in that manner takes a lot of time.
Yeah, it does.
So
Awesome.
what we love about it in our world language classes as well as ESL is the ability for that technology to support the standards of reading, writing, listening, and speaking, give corrective feedback, just-in-time information, and also to put them in a media-rich environment. So, great question. Thank
Because
you.
it's a great place to use it. Thank you.
One other point that I would add to that, when we talk about special area subjects, so right now in our model, one of the reasons that we're trying to look at technology differently in equity and access is that in the shared model, we're either creating specialty labs or we have sign-out carts for those subject areas. And so it still is challenging for all foreign language classrooms to have that technology. So when we think about it in a different way, where every 10th grader, every 11th grader has a device, now it doesn't matter what classroom they go to, all teachers can leverage technology equally for their environments because they don't have to share those resources and the kids have them everywhere they go. And by the way, the backpacks are coming with little padded areas in them as well, so most backpacks are equipped to handle technology devices.
As we think about this tool, we're talking about the student-teacher interaction, but there's a component here that we have to keep track of with Danielson, and that's communication with families. Students can go into their account at home and the parents are actually able to see the feedback that we're giving their students. So if a parent had any type of concern about any academic area, the parents would be able to search with the student that feedback that we're giving, as well as the grades that are given for each of the individual assignments. So there's a communication with families component here as well that can be tapped into.
I kind of got a question which I'm curious about because of everything, and I'm all for technology, and this sounds really good. What happens to if you take it away? Can the kids still be able to write if they want to communicate? You know what I'm saying? In other words, without the device, what's happening to our writing skills and so forth like that? You know, it's kind of like when I was younger, when the calculator was introduced, you know, everybody was worried about it, and obviously everything's fine. But I'm just saying, what's to assure that this becomes so dependent they can't communicate with one another?
And that's
Without-
And that's why you have to find the balance. I mean, we want our students to be able to write their signatures when they sign checks. We want them to be able to
Right,
read
that's what I'm
cursive if somebody leaves them a note.
I mean, it sounds funny, but it could, you know.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So we do have to make sure that we're balancing this with those paper pencil activities.
Okay.
However, it does have to be a balance because it's the demands of society too. I mean,
I'm saying, I'm totally 100% for it. I think it's great, but I'm just wondering how that is being worked in. So, you know, you can communicate if the device is taken away from you, that's all.
Yeah.
It's still in the curriculum too, Dr. Butts was saying. So it's not, do you want to speak to that?
Yes, handwriting is still part of our curriculum, so we still
Well, I
have.
realize that, but I'm just saying, if this goes forward and, you know, it becomes, are we gonna eventually, like, you know, lose it? That's all I'm worried about. That's all. I mean, I understand now. I mean, I'm just worried about the future.
operative answer to that is paper and pencil never stop working. Networks
Right.
go down.
Yeah. But I'm just saying, there are people who, like, even with the calculator, there are people who are so dependent on it. You know, I've seen it.
Can these devices be networked to the device at a child's home, or do they need the device itself in order to?
I got that one. Because right now we're using Google Drive. So Google Drive, if I log in at my house, bakerbgnpen.org, I can access anything that I did at school. If I'm away for the weekend and I can get on something at Starbucks, they have some place where I can jump on a computer, bakerbgnpen.org. I can get into my Google Drive. That's one of the joys of Google Drive. Just using Google is that it's everywhere, any device where you have the accessibility to log in with your login.
I can tell you the downside of some of it, though. A couple things happen. First, you shift the cost of the paper and printing idea to the parents, which some kids don't have printers at home. You'd be surprised. And that's an issue sometimes. The other thing is, I like to share the respondent document directly with me, and you still require some kids to carry it in and hand it in, that kind of thing. That's an issue. The other thing is, yes, they don't have ads, but Google itself is an ad. Remember, Google's a profit-making business, okay? So that in itself is one of the issues that some parents throw up. And that got thrown at me the first time I ever used it. So I want to ask a couple questions about your estimates. You have some cost estimates on a spreadsheet for us. You're assuming that 50% of your students, or 50% of our elementary students are going to accept the fee in your estimates, right? It looks to me like about 3,500.
For the budgeting process right now, for the students who would have devices in the one-to-one environment, yeah, it would be, I base my projections, yes, on 50% of the 5,000 that we budgeted that we would have 50% buy-in to a lease-to-own model. And then I did factor in a percentage of students who would be paying that computer fee. So obviously, that's something that we would need to flesh out in more detail, and we could do that at finance and ECP or both. But looking at, if students don't want to pay a fee, or if parents, aren't comfortable with that, how do we address that? But also I did factor that in at a rate that addresses free and reduced as well. So we would be able to provide for those students without, unnecessary burden.
That would be a significant amount of kids, I would think. Smartphones have the capability, though, to do some of this stuff. If they bring their own device, That could be a solution for some, but those people are already affluent, so they're not the people applying for free and reduced lunch and looking for programs like this. I like the idea that you can have usage reports. I think fees being charged to the public is gonna be a rough one, even though it gets done all the time, obviously, at the collegiate level and other places, but that's not what public school is. I think the prep time and the upload times, I mean, the investment I have to go through to build some of these things are an issue for prep. It's always great to share your work with others. I don't think that's 100% across the board in every department, though, so you have to be leery of that. That might be an issue long-term. This comes with a big price tag. I haven't heard anybody trying to figure out how to address that. I do know we have offset costs because we will have some savings in some other areas, but I don't know if it's an immediate savings or a progressive savings that comes about as we learn to use some of this technology better. And again, it's always the same problem that when I first came here, as we expanded on technology, the issue between owning and leasing, we chose leasing because we knew that technology was changing so rapidly. It would benefit us in the long term. We heard many districts that invested money in owning and they regretted it instantly because of the changes. So it's just a big chunk of change in a time when we don't have a lot of money.
Absolutely, I understand.
But it is the way of the future. More and more textbooks won't be available. Workbooks become too expensive. Copyright issues will come into play quite a lot, especially with our staff. So we're going to have to work on that training issues.
Absolutely. Actually, if you look at our Bright Bites data, that's one of the places where our teachers and our students score higher is on that digital citizenship piece. So that credits, our teachers in the classroom and Mr. Baker's work as well as our administrators, because that is consistently being reinforced with our students, whether it's a shared model or a one-to-one model. That's a critical piece for our students today.
You have, from the spreadsheet estimates, from your projected cost for this one-to-one initiative, you're looking to roll this out next year.
Yes, that's correct.
Is it already in the budget?
Yes, we have approximately $1.2 million in the budget for this initiative. That was in the preliminary budget that was approved by the board a few weeks ago.
So there's a savings there?
We would be able to carve out roughly $200,000 over what we have in right now, correct?
But this is, if I read this correctly, then 16, we're talking about 16, 17, right?
Right.
So we're at a total cost of $3 million. Is that correct?
No, I think that the number we need to focus on is the total lease cost per year down at the bottom under 16, 17.
Oh, okay.
$937,000. So right now, in the preliminary budget that was approved, it's $1.15 million, I believe we had in for the year one lease. So roughly $260,000 would be able to be carved out. And the reason for that primarily is from the curriculum savings.
Yeah.
That was not reflected in the preliminary budget.
I just remember spending $1.1 million on books last year.
A few years ago, yeah. Well, that's part of that progressive savings as more and more books become an ebook. It's just, the other issue is obviously when you look at long-term cost, ebooks are supposed to be less, but are they?
That's right.
Manufacturers come up with new versions, next thing you know, 2 years is the span of and they upgrade and enhance, and now you're buying an ebook every 2 years instead of taking a book and using it for 10.
Right.
I mean, some of the books we had at the high school were more than 10 years old. I mean, how much does math change? That's the issue for some in that context. So, okay. Any other questions?
What are we doing from a tech support standpoint? So if there's a malfunction with one device and one computer somewhere in the district, is that on the teacher to try to troubleshoot the problem, or what capabilities do we have
Oh,
to
yeah,
address
is the
those
teacher in
issues?
charge of the enforcement issue too?
We actually have a tech support assistant in every building. Some are full-time and some are part-time. Our high school and middle school are
Okay.
full-time. Currently, we have a part-time person in every elementary school who's available for that initial support, that just-in-time support, as well as Mr. Baker. So he, for example, for Google Classroom or other initiatives that we roll out, he'll create tutorial videos that those teachers have access to. So we do have personnel to be able to support that. One of the things that is in the budget moving forward that hasn't been in past refresh cycles is that complete care accidental warranty protection, so that we would be interfacing directly with companies and be able to send the equipment back within that lease period of time with the warranty and get new equipment. So we would have very little downtime for technology.
This initiative it would result in a significant expansion in the number of devices that are in the schools. Are you anticipating that you'd need additional staff members down the line, or do we have the capacity to do what we would like to do with the staff we have?
We have the capacity with the staff we have. I mean,
Well,
that is a
needs
real benefit to our district. You have been very dedicated to providing technology support staff here in this district. And leveraging something like the Google portal allows us to have streamlined support. So we would have, some high-level people at the top coordinating that, but then we are able to provide different types of security access for our building level people to support the staff in those buildings. So we are very well staffed.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
If you're going to study the issue further, whether it's through ECP or another group, the policing issue, cost of control is going to be an issue, because as a teacher in the classroom, if I have 30 students in that room and there's only so many with insurance, there's only so many that are allowed to take it home I need to know how that is. I mean, I go through that with just our simple community public publicity issues, where there's 3 people in the room that can't be in part of any kind of publicity photos or anything else, yet that's not, it's like I gotta go find the list to know who they are. It's not something you would know. This would be something a teacher is responsible for. So it is another facet you wanna look at, because somebody else is gonna be responsible for this stuff besides the student. The person who gave it to them, and the person who's supposed to control it.
Ron, while you're here, can I ask one additional question?
Sure.
What's your experience with the amount of instructional time that you're trying to make sure your students are on the right screen and getting them to where they need to go and things like that?
I want to make sure that all my students are going where they need to go, and there's that acceptable use policy where we make sure that we ask students to make sure that you're using these devices properly, because it's a district device, you're on a district server. Now, what I will say is that my job is to make sure that I'm around the room as much as possible. Making sure that I'm eyes on the room. I'm not sitting at my desk and while the students are working. Now, don't get me wrong. Do I have a student who kind of does a search here or there? Yeah, that's going to happen. It's human nature. Kids are curious. But also, we need to make sure that we're proactive in teaching those digital citizenship skills, in saying that this is a work site. This is where we work. This is where we show our work. And if we wouldn't want to show it to our parents, then we want to make sure that we're not going there. We do make sure that we're using these devices as good as possible. We'll have eyes everywhere we can. Nothing is ever perfect. No filter's perfect. And I am one eye in the room. However, the kids have really taken ownership and been very responsible. The amount of time that I take to actually correct kids on where they're supposed to be, rather than where they are, it's very minimal, because they're engaged in the process.
Okay.
And that goes with the TPAC model, making sure that your pedagogy and your content are matching your technology and the kids are engaged.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Is your classroom management software for wireless devices in a room?
I'm sorry?
I couldn't.
Is there classroom management software for wireless in a room?
Yes, there are a number of pieces of software, teacher dashboard type tools that we could purchase, so that it's a little easier for teachers to see all of the screens at one time.
Yeah, I mean, I run the screen behind me all the time with the smart classroom up, so I can see what they're doing while I'm walking around the room.
Yeah. So yes, we would look at those tools as well.
Do these devices have cameras on them?
They do, yes.
Are they enabled at any point?
Only for the individual user. So
No remote access?
No remote access, no.
That was where he was going.
Yeah.
Any other questions? All right.
Very good.
Thank you very
Thank you
much for
very
the
much.
opportunity
Thank you very
to
much.
speak with you this
Thank you,
evening.
Ron. Thank you, Brett.
That's all we have for this evening, Mr. President.
So we can take these home, right?
Those are IU.
They want them back, people. No, it can't be that bad.
So Dr. Dietrich, you're going to an Apple conference?
I am.
I don't know, I mean, I know from the foundation meeting, but I don't know the rest of them, they all know.
Yes, the superintendents in Montgomery County have been invited by Apple to come to Cupertino to see some things that Apple is working on. It's a great opportunity for us. They're asking for us to give them some feedback also. It's pretty highly controlled, so we're not to bring all the secrets back, but we'll get some insights into where they're headed with some of the future applications that Apple is putting together. So that'll be happening in early March. It's a great opportunity for us.
Motion to end this meeting? No one's here?